It's been about a month since Columbina's release, so we've had some time to figure out her best teams and her place in the meta, but as we all know, meta isn't everything. And I personally had a lot of fun these past weeks just trying Columbina out in all kinds of different teams, usually by just putting her with a bunch of my favorite characters to see what works and what doesn't. And today I wanna share some of my favorite non-meta Columbina teams. And by non-meta I basically just mean that all the other non-Nod-Krai 5-stars are banned in this video, which still leaves us with a lot of great characters of course, so some of the teams in this video still reach DPS numbers that can be considered meta, but the point of this video is basically just to show off some fun Columbina teams that aren't completely Nod-Krai centric. Also a quick disclaimer before we start, my Columbina is C2R1, but since some of the teams I'm gonna show won't have Ascendant Gleam and part of her constellations only works in Ascendant Gleam, her constellations actually won't affect this video too much, but they of course still make a bit of a difference. If you wanna know more about my Columbina build, I recommend you check out my C0 and C2 Columbina showcases, as well as my Nefer showcase, where I also used Columbina. But now, without further ado, let's talk about some fun Columbina teams, starting with Hyperbloom. Now, playing Columbina in a Bloom team is of course not unusual, however most of the time it's just straight Lunar-Bloom, with Nefer or Lorma or both. But Columbina also works well as the Hydro applicator in a classic Hyperbloom team, and I personally love Hyperbloom because Kuki Shinobu is one of my favorite characters. I'm actually one of the handful of people who are seriously playing her even before Dendro was added to the game. But yeah, Columbina of course doesn't buff Hyperbloom, but you still get some Lunar-Bloom when generating the Bloom cores before Shinobu then turns them into Hyperbloom missiles, and you also get the occasional Lunar-Charged reaction. And as the on-field driver, Columbina contributes a lot of personal Lunar-Bloom damage as well with her special charged attack. And the Dendro applicators I'm using are Collei with Instructor and Lumine with Deepwood Memories. Now Hida would be better than either of them, but I don't have her. And this team still works really well with just these two free-to-play Dendro characters. Overall, this team does around 63k DPS, which is really not bad for a team without Ascendant Gleam. And Columbina did by far the most damage, followed by Shinobu, who also did quite a lot by constantly triggering Hyperbloom. And if we replace Collei with Aino for the Ascendant Gleam, then the DPS actually increases to 72,000. Aino is also holding Instructor in this run like Collei, since my Columbina is holding Silken Moon Serenade already, and that set's effect doesn't stack. And the main reason for the almost 10k difference are Columbina's constellations here, which are affected by a lot by Ascendant Gleam. With C0 Columbina, the results would be much closer, I'm pretty sure, since Columbina's base kit is not affected by Ascendant Gleam much. But in the end, both teams are really good and also just feel really good to play. Hyperbloom is just still one of the best reactions. Now, next up we have Lunar Chiori. Chiori is another one of my favorite characters, and as some of you may know, Chiori actually got kind of an indirect buff with Columbina's release thanks to Lunar-Crystallize, because the moon drifts created by the Lunar-Crystallize reaction count as geoconstructs, which means that Chiori can now put her second doll on the field without needing a teammate that can create geoconstructs. Though for my Chiori that doesn't really matter that much because she's C2 and C1 already solves the geoconstruct problem. And one thing that I love to do with Chiori is play her as a main DPS, even though it's not her intended role, unless you have C6. But her normal attacks are just too beautiful not to use them. And with Columbina and a Geo support like Goro, a Lunar-Crystallize team focused around Chiori can actually do pretty good damage. As you can see here, I was able to reach over 80k DPS without even Ascendant Gleam or a third Geo character for Goro's full buffs. Chiori did the most damage here, followed by Columbina. And the same team, but with Aino instead of Kokomi, to get that Ascendant Gleam, got almost 90k DPS. But it actually gets even better, with Kachina instead of Aino. 96,000, thanks to the City artifact set that Kachina is holding. And if I had Xilonen, then this team would easily do over 100k DPS, but sadly I don't have her on this account since I did these damage tests on my main account. And I only have Xilonen on my free-to-play alt account. And part of the reason why these Geo teams are doing so much damage is of course because of the constellations I have on Columbina and Chiori. But I am pretty sure that this team would still reach at least 70k, maybe even over 80k, if both of them were Z0. And that is honestly enough for most endgame modes except maybe Fearless difficulty or above Stygian Onslaught. Which is just to say that, as we can already see after just the first few teams, that despite her restrictions, Columbina is definitely still an amazing character even outside of strict non-Nod-Krai teams. But yeah, time for the next team, and we're just gonna stick with Lunar-Crystallize for now and take a look at Lunar Noelle. The OG mate saw Ineffa working well with Columbina and said, alright, bad. I've always been of the opinion that Noelle is a little bit underrated. I mean, most players are aware that she can be a pretty decent DPS, especially at C6, but not only is she a good DPS, but she heals and shields at the same time, so you can just fill the team up with supports and sub-DPSs and don't have to worry about sustain at all, because Noelle is her own sustain. And I love that, I love playing Noelle, and this team here, which is basically the same as the previous one, just with Kachina being switched out for Noelle and Noelle now being used as the main DPS and Chiori as a sub-DPS, still reached over 90k DPS, which for a 1.0 4-star DPS is really not bad. I mean, ignore the fact that Chiori and Columbina both outdamaged her, that's because of their constellations. At C0 it would be different, I'm pretty sure. But it gets even better when we switch out Goro for Furina. Because as most of you probably know, Furina and Noelle work incredibly well together because of the self-sustain I just mentioned a minute ago, which allows Noelle to gain a lot of fanfare stacks for Furina. Just this one little character switch catapults this team from 90k all the way up to 111k DPS, with Noelle now doing more damage than Columbina and even almost outdamaging Chiori. She's rivaling a modern C2 5-star here. Yeah, Noelle is just still incredible, even after all those years. But yeah, okay, let's bring this video back to its roots, because damage is nice and all, but I was saying in the beginning that these teams were all about fun, not just damage. And the ones we've seen so far definitely are a lot of fun, but the next one is an actual just for fun, silly, very non-meta team. The Afk Archon team. You've probably seen Afk teams before, where you just put a bunch of characters with automatically attacking skills or bursts together and then just stand there and watch your enemies die. And one of the most popular variants of that is a team full of Archons, since a lot of the Archons actually have AFK-able skills. But what if we put Columbina in there, since she's basically to non-Nod-Krai what the Archons are to their respective regions? Well, we get this. I put Columbina with Furina, Raiden and Maoika here, but Nahida and Zhongli should work as well. I just don't have them. And I'm also only using the skills here, no bursts, and yet they still reached almost 50k DPS, with Columbina notably doing almost half of the team's entire damage, followed by Furina with 23%, and then Raiden and Maoika did around the same damage, with Raiden being slightly ahead. It's just so funny to me that teams like this exist, where you can really just stand around and win by doing absolutely nothing. Win the Luigi way. But now what happens if I do the same thing, but actually throw Columbina's burst in the mix this time? Just hers, none of the others. Yet. And well, that alone actually pushes the DPS up to 57k, so almost 10k more than before, with Columbina now doing exactly 50% of the damage. And what's very interesting here is also that Raiden almost outdamaged Furina, probably because of the Lunar-Charged reactions she triggers, since those get buffed by Columbina's burst. So yeah, almost 60k by just standing there and doing nothing. But what if I actually use the team? What if I actually attack? AFKing is over, the Archons have come to slay you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, except dodge my shitty Maoika gameplay. I never bothered learning her combos, I'm sorry, I know it looks bad. But even as the Maoika noob that I am, I still managed to get a nice 69k DPS with this team. And Columbina still did most of the damage, of course, but now it wasn't even 40%, and surprise surprise, Maoika now outdamages both Raiden and Furina. Even though I didn't focus on just her, I kinda used both her and Raiden as on-field DPS. If I had only focused on one of the two, that one would have probably done the most damage, or maybe Columbina would still be ahead. I then actually went in again, but I switched my Columbina's weapon from her signature to R5 Prototype Amber to be able to heal and utilize Furina's burst a bit better. And the Archon team actually reached almost 75k that way. And as you can see, the damage distribution is really even here, with Mavica interestingly enough doing the least damage and Raiden outdamaging both Mavica and Furina. Then I decided to try focusing on just Raiden as the main DPS, using Mavica as just a sub-DPS, and that actually enabled this team to breach the 80k DPS barrier, with Raiden now outdamaging even Columbina, and Mavica being by far the weakest link in the team. That sentence has never been said before. Just goes to show how much damage is coming from Lunar-Charged in this team, with Mavica being the only character here that can't trigger any Lunar reactions. So that's why she kind of falls behind a bit. But be that as it may, I had a lot of fun experimenting with this team. This is a really great one. I really recommend trying this, or any variation of an AFK team. It's just still so funny to me that this actually works. Wouldn't recommend it for Abyss, but in the overworld, definitely worth trying out. You can just casually walk around while everything around you is dying. Okay, so now there's one more team that I wanna show in this video, because another one of my favorite characters that I have used a lot with Columbina lately is Skirk. Skirk, of course, wants a full team of Hydro and Cryo characters, but when using her with Columbina, I found that it's actually kinda worth it to put one Electro character in the team. Usually that's Ineffa, but she's banned in this video, so here I'm using Shinobu instead. With one Electro character, Skirk loses a bit of her personal damage, but Columbina more than makes up for that with Lunar-Charged, and in the end, Skirk still did over 2 million damage in 60 seconds, and overall the team did 81k DPS. So despite the suboptimal conditions for Skirk, this team still works really well, you know, well enough for most endgame content, and it's still really fun. But I also tried another variation of this team with Aino for the Ascending Gleam, and Fischl for even more Electro application, and that still got over 70k DPS, with Skirk doing over 50% this time, so even a more free-to-play friendly version of Lunar Skirk still feels pretty viable. But yeah, those are some of the Columbina teams I've tried out over the past 2 weeks. Of course, there are a lot more possibilities, but the main takeaway of all this damage testing with all these different teams is simply that Columbina is much more versatile than she might seem at first glance. Of course, her strongest, most optimal teams are always gonna have at least one other non-Nod-Krai 5-star, but what I want to show in this video is simply that you don't always need to build the strongest possible teams. There are a lot of teams that at first glance might not seem that good or worth investing into, but then turn out to actually work better than expected, and sometimes are even strong enough to almost rival meta teams despite the limitations. I mean, just look at the Noelle team with the 111k DPS. And that is honestly part of what makes team building so fun in Genshin Impact to me. Some people look at a character like Columbina and just see her restrictions, see which teams she can't be used in, but I look at characters like her and see thousands of possibilities. I mean, I'm the guy who played physical Shinobu before Dendro was a thing, and Vape Nilou before I got her C6. I don't let the meta stop me from building teams that are just silly and fun, and you shouldn't either. Even if you can only use them in the overworld, they are still worth building. But yeah, with that all being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please leave a like, and also tell me in the comments what your favorite Columbina teams are. Subscribe for more Genshin Impact and other gacha content. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.